Hello and welcome to Higher Results, where business, workforce, and talent intersect. I'm Melodie Reagan, the CEO of Eye2Eye Workforce and your host. On Higher Results, we cover all things about your workforce throughout the full employee life cycle as well as you and your career. And so here's one of the things that I just want to share with you for today. We're actually going to dig into you and your career. And this is the fine art of finding a job today, because the way you find a job today has seriously changed. And I'm going to share a couple of statistics with you. In 2017, the U.S. economy added 2 million jobs. The national unemployment rate today it's under 5%. It's been under 5% since 2016. In 2018, it dropped to 3.9%. This is national, and believe it or not, that's a 17 and a half year low. Crazy, right? Yet, here's what I find fascinating about this. Many workers are actually still struggling to find jobs. Or, they are struggling to find jobs that fit their skills. So we want to dig in a little bit today and find out what is really going on here. If unemployment is really low, why do we have as many people as we do currently unemployed? And part of what's happening is they're actually checking out of the workforce. Or for those that are maybe in a job that they're not enjoying, why are they struggling to find a job that really fits them? And with us today, I'm really thrilled to say, is my very dear friend, Patrice Barber. And Patrice is the Director of Executives in Transition. So we're going to talk about the entire workforce, but we're going to have a little bit of a focus on executives. So Patrice, welcome to the show. Really thrilled to have you here.
Thanks, Melody. It's a pleasure.
So do me a favor, let's tell everybody about you, because you have such a fantastic background and do such great work.
So my background is as an industrial engineer, started out in Texas Instruments, semiconductor manufacturing, had some fantastic projects, and after several years, worked at Hatto, Japan and Italy, I decided I know lots about finance and leadership and all these great things, and I'm going to start a company. So I started my first company here in Colorado, back in the 90s, when I was 29 years old, and figured out I knew nothing about sales or marketing. After a few years, cash flow positive, learned a lot about a lot of different things, is being a serial entrepreneur and launching a total of 6 different companies, successfully managed to exit out of 3 of those. So I figure the odds are in my favor. So most recently, I stepped into the world of digital marketing and CRM implementation, things like Marketo, Infusionsoft, that sort of thing. Lots of tech, indeed. And had the pleasure of working with several different organizations where I was asked to become the director of the Executives in Transition program as a part of that work. And I have to say, that part has been so rewarding for me personally. I love the transitions and transformations that I get to see with these executives. We've had over 100 people through the program in the last 3-ish years. We're on cohort number 12. And every time it's such a delight, and I learn something from every single group as well. So such a pleasure to be working with them.
So tell me, what is Executives in Transition? What do you do?
So it's a 5-week program with 10 sessions. We meet a couple of hours each week. Very different from an outplacement service, but it does help entrepreneurs, specifically those director and above executives, to get their resume in order, understand how to use LinkedIn properly. Many of them have an account, but they don't actually understand how they're going to do any posting, get found on search results, things of that nature. So they do a lot of accountability in small groups and help each other in peer-to-peer reviews, which is the part that's really different from outsourced outplacement types of programs. As a part of it, there's a lot of networking that gets involved and engaged. They get a lot of feedback from executive recruiters, both on the retained side as well as recruiters who work inside of companies. They get a lot of feedback from other types of experts, so they really understand when they come out what will work for them. They have a clear process. They know exactly what they're going to do. For networking, that's probably the biggest thing that they come away telling me about, is the networking skills and their actual networking activity vastly different, and they actually come out saying they have fun.
So I want to drive this discussion. We're going to go a little bit deeper about what happens when employers are looking for workers, both contingent and W-2. You know, at IDI, we do a tremendous amount of recruiting and outsourced HR. So I want to start with the end in mind. And what I want to tell everybody, just please, if you take any one thing away, the way we look for talent and the way we hire talent has changed. So the way you did it 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it doesn't work anymore. So let's start with the end in mind. How are employers looking for talent, Patrice?
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, LinkedIn. They start there and they vet all of their candidates. They Google search. If you're out there looking, you want to be sure that you have had a friend Google search your particular name, because your computer will keep information slightly differently than what somebody else might see. Very important to actually look and see, what does your Facebook profile come up with? What does your LinkedIn profile show? Do you have a Google account that maybe you forgot you had and you haven't updated in a while? Maybe your pictures are a little outdated. All of these things, including recommendations on
That's right.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
vitally important. And they begin their search there. Most of the talent today, recruiters look online for people who are actually already working. So it behooves anybody who's thinking that they're going to become part of a transition in any way. If
right.
they're hesitant about that, generally most people have a gut feeling about that something's going to happen. Be proactive, find out what you're supposed to be doing first, and get engaged with the process. It also helps to make the emotional transition a lot more gentle when you're in charge of your process and you're not being told, oh, today's your last day, good luck, have a nice life. So LinkedIn, online, digital is a huge part of what they're looking at and looking for. And they look at most people's engagement online as well. Like, are you technically savvy? Otherwise you get put in a box for ageism, frankly. So watch out for it.
So by the way, when employers are looking, let me just say what Patrice said, it's all about digital. We have gone online. LinkedIn is one of the dominant recruiting tools, but it's for white collar positions. That's an old time phrase that I'm going to say, but it very old time. I'm showing my age. But just so you guys know, it's job boards online. We use a wide range of job boards, from Dice to Munster to Indeed. So make sure that you have presence at a digital level, depending on the career that you're in. And it's exactly what Patrice said. Pay attention to your digital footprint. Now I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Because we're living in a digital world, everybody hears about keywords, right? And I get people who ask me, is my resume really important? Well, guess what? Yes, your resume really is important. When you're applying for a job, how you present yourself, your resume, and are you sharing the information I need? And because we live in a world of bots, what's happening now is the bots will scan first. And if you don't have some of the keywords that we're looking for, we may pass you by. So you have to make sure that you're playing and looking for a job at a very digital level. But then relationships matter as well, because what happens is we move from something that is automated to relationships. And one way that you can bypass what is happening online is if you have relationships. The other thing that I will tell you is timelines for recruiting have gotten shorter and shorter. I talk to people constantly where, well, I put my resume in, should I not follow up with them, give them 2 weeks, 3 weeks? You need to pay attention and move faster. And if you go on an interview, sending an electronic email that says thank you, speed in the process matters for both the employer and the prospective employee. So you gotta stay strong digitally, make sure that your resume is conveying what we're looking for, and then you need to create the relationships in the process, okay? So we're gonna dig a little deeper into this. All right, so Patrice, do you know today, what are some the jobs that are hard to find? Why are we sitting in this dynamic where unemployment is so low, and yet we have people that are saying, hey, I'm struggling to find a job? Why?
There's a lot of different dynamics and factors that are contributing to that. Starting point is we actually have a lower union impact. And so wages have been impacted. And so people aren't willing to accept the lower paying jobs that are out there that might be at their skill level. So that's one area. There's become a greater disparity between the upper jobs and the lower paying jobs as well. There's not much in the middle. So if you are more of a middle manager, that's a tough place to find work, because people in those jobs are not actually comfortable moving as frequently as they used to, even across state lines. Some of that's because of licensure or accreditations and things of that are state-based, depending on the industry that we're talking about. Some of that is they're concerned that they may not have the same kind of health care if they shift companies, that there's a lot of perceptions about a loss, a lack, if they move, if they shift jobs. So they're kind of hanging on with dear life to these jobs, which is also in causing this whole disparity between wages. So there's a variety of different factors there. So middle jobs are there. Outsourcing, globalization, we all hear about that. Companies, as a CEO, my job is to the stakeholders. That's the investors, the stockholders, the board of directors. I'm supposed to be keeping things profitable. If I can ship jobs to someplace overseas and hopefully maintain the quality, which is often debatable, I'm going to try that. And what happens is that is at a wage that is something, an order of a magnitude lower, and it drives down wages here and makes the jobs not available in the US. So there's a variety of different factors impacting why it's so difficult to find jobs depending on the skill sets. The jobs where I can tell you that you need to stay focused on and skill sets you need to keep in mind is things where there is inference required. So what I'm talking about with inference is AI, artificial intelligence, adding robots to the lines. Having come from a manufacturing environment, I watched this happen in Texas Instruments, more and more automation, which is great, helps with our overall profitability.
Yeah.
However, it does replace jobs of humans. The guy that made those buggy whips years and years ago is no longer required.
That's right.
The guys that used to be on the assembly lines are no longer required, and the gals as well. And now it's moving further even into content development. So things that we thought was going to have to have a person and an individual doing it, content creation has become part of the AI set of work. So where there's opportunity is places where you have inference, which AI is just not caught up to that yet. And I was at a seminar recently in Silicon Valley with some of the most brainiac people around who are developing AI solutions all over the place, and that was something I learned in spades. That's a long time coming. So anytime where you can be involved in a decision-making kind of a process, those kinds of skill sets, that's where you want to hone your skills and keep your skills, and that is a place of safety for future jobs.
By the way, excellent points. I'm going to go a little deeper on a couple of items that Patrice has brought up. For everybody, when you are thinking about your career, it's important that you manage your career, not somebody else. It's really important that you take care of it. A couple of resources for you. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a handbook. It's called an occupational handbook, and it does projections on what are jobs in the next 10 years. You also have state-specific information. It tells you about salaries. One of the things that's happening is we are adding jobs. There are a lot of jobs. Jobs are changing. Exactly what Patrice said. Organizations are going flat, so that middle manager level is going away at a fairly rapid pace, quite frankly, even though we don't want that in some instances. We're looking for grave efficiency. Efficiency has become such an important part of every business. And one thing that you cannot stop is you cannot stop innovation. We are going to automate things. So the question is, how do you maintain a skill level? And it used to be that people would come out of school, they'd get their certificate, and it's like, hey, I've done my thing. I am prepared for the future. You have to learn how to learn, and you have to constantly be in development of your skill set because it's constantly going to be changing. And it's exactly what you said. We're actually animating, or I should say automating on this one is what I'm going to say, automating content creation. There are companies that will get blogs for $50. And so content, social media, things that you think, they're changing incredibly rapidly. And so your skill set has to shift. And the other thing that's happening is as organizations are changing, where that job ends up is very different. I'm going to demonstrate one in HR, which I find quite fascinating. We went through some pretty serious automation in marketing, and we continue to do that. As Patrice and I know, we've worked together in marketing for many, many years. This is also happening in HR now. What's happening is some of the base rote functions in HR are being automated with HRIS, applicant tracking systems, what we talked about with recruiting. Well, what's fascinating in bigger organizations is what happens to HR at a core level. The system support is moving to infrastructure, so it's actually moving into IT. So the base level support for HR is actually moving into IT and out of classic HR, and classic HR is becoming strategic. So interestingly enough, you guys, with the changes that are happening in the workforce, actually it's affecting our organizational structures, and our organizational structures are affecting the jobs that are available. So it's really important that you keep up on your career. Now, let's talk about the person looking for a job. You do a lot of coaching with this with EIT and bringing people in. What do I need to do? So let's say that I want to look for a job, or I am in transition. Where do I start and what do I do, Patrice?
So some of the first things to think about is really getting your story straight. Depending on how you came into this transition, if you were fired from your job, you were let go, there was an exit strategy, or those things are coming, will drive how you tell your story. Getting clear about that and getting comfortable with that and how you're going to tell the story so that it reflects where you're going to go is vitally important. Figuring out where do you want to go next. Really looking at this as an opportunity, not as a horrible thing that happened to me and woe is me, but really a time of inflection to think about, what do I want to do next? So considering that, and then looking online at job descriptions, figuring out what kind of things are out there that really appeal to you, that really speak to your passions. It's vitally important that when you're looking, especially at the director and above level, that you're considering different types of positions that make you want to jump up in the morning and get out there and go do it. Don't choose something that is going to be ho-hum, boring, because you've already been doing it and you think that's all you're skilled to do. That's kind of a fallacy. There are certain industries that certainly want to have background, historical information and historical experience, healthcare being one of them. But aside from that, most skills are transferable. So think about where do you want to live, what kind of a job do you really want to be doing, and then make sure that your story hangs together, both digitally on your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, and then there's a document that we tend to suggest that especially executives use, which we call a professional summary, which is more of a marketing piece, and it has on the bottom of it something really critical. Target companies. Get clear about the kind of companies that you want to work with, the kind of people, the kind of culture, all of those things. Think about that. It's vital to making your next position a great fit for you. The people that you interview with, they pick up on your discontent about the culture of that company, or that you don't really want this kind of position, that you're just kind of interviewing because you think it's a good fit and you can get the job, but you don't really want it. They pick up on those kinds of things. So make sure that you're really looking at that. Networking. Really, really important, as Melodie just suggested previously, that you understand job boards are an important part of the process, and they have great information on them to tell you what's going on in the marketplace. But if you really want to get into a job, you have to leverage your connections, your network, and you have to work that network in a very intentional and methodical way. And that's going to really make a big difference to the whole process. It's going to be a lot more fun, frankly. It's very disappointing when I have folks come into the Executive and Transition program. I can't tell you how many times they'll say, oh yeah, I've been looking for months, and I've been placing my resume out there on all these job boards, and occasionally I might get a call back. Most of the time I don't. Like 100 different times I've applied. And these are really smart, well-gifted people. There's not any issue with hiring them at all. It's just the process that they're going through, and they didn't really leverage their network. Like you mentioned, not asking the question about, okay, so shall I reach out to the HR manager and the hiring manager and Joe over in the department next door that happens to know them to see What's the process? What's the timing? How soon? Should I expect to hear asking a simple question if you do get a phone interview to say, would it be okay if I called you next week or 2 weeks, or what is your timing? Finding out that kind of stuff. So all of that preparation, vitally important. Practicing your pitch, 30-second elevator pitch, in an elevator with people that you don't know. Be bold. Get out there and try it.
Excellent point. By the way, a couple of other things that I always tell people that really, truly matter is looking for a job is a job. It takes a lot of focus and discipline. And one of the things, Patrice brought up the job descriptions. Remember when we talked about it being electronic, go out and find the jobs that you're interested in. Take a yellow marker, mark the keywords. What are they looking for? Because when we set up the bots, we're setting up the bots against those keywords of skills that we're looking for. Make sure that you have that information on your resume as you go through it. Now, the other thing that I want to say, if you're looking for a job, set up a process. It's a discipline. Each week, tell yourself, I'm going to apply directly to this many companies. I am going to look at this many jobs and see what's going on in the market. And if I apply directly, I'm going to try to reach out to my network. I am going to make sure that I go to some networking events in terms of follow-up. I am going to track what I applied to. I'm going to do follow-up. And just so you know, I was talking to somebody earlier today. Sometimes you'll get a rejection. Don't give up necessarily. If you really want that job, come back through and find somebody that you know. Like, Patrice, do you know the hiring manager? Can you connect me with that person? Use your connections, but looking for a job is a job. And the other thing that I tell people, don't put false parameters when you go in and you interview. You can't say no to a job that wasn't offered. So when Patrice is talking about getting your story straight, get your story straight. Present yourself. Now, one last thing that I absolutely want to say to you. When you're looking for a job, it feels crazy personal because you're selling the most personal thing yourself. The process for the organization that's looking to hire, it isn't personal. They are not looking at it, they're looking at it from the organization and looking to find the right skill and the right fit. So it doesn't start off for them as personal. Now, once you get the job, it becomes personal, right? Because that's our network. What is a job? It becomes part of our network. But I get people all the time saying to me, well, I applied, I interviewed, why didn't they hire me? And you know what? Part of the reason that they may not have hired you, it had nothing to do with whether you did a great interview, you have all the right skills. Maybe what happened is there was a determination that there was somebody internally that they needed to promote.
Right.
You know, you don't know where they're at in the job search process. So don't make it personal. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to improve. And one other thing is your resume should be a living document. A lot of people will put together just a resume. As Patrice is always saying, you know, when you go to apply, make sure that your resume is fitting that job. And, you know, your cover letters matter. We also search on cover letters, so pay attention to that. So here is, one of the things that I want to say, what would you say are some common mistakes that you would just, in an ending, what are some common mistakes and how do we go about avoiding them?
So I think one of the most common mistakes that I see people making is in presenting their story in their written form, resumes, LinkedIn profiles and things, they have a hard time sharing their achievements. This continues to shock me a bit. And I guess I can understand we don't like to toot our own horn. We're told from a very young age, oh, don't be braggadocious. Well, this is a time to really understand and clarify the difference between bragging and sharing the fact that you can bring value. And that's really how people need to look at this when they're in this process, is what is the value that I'm going to be bringing to this company by sharing what I've already done in measurable, tangible ways, you know, taking a company from 0 to 10 million.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. And we should share that information. And did it in 2 years. Oh, great. Prepared the CEO for their exit strategy. It doesn't mean you did it all yourself. This is not about I. There is always a we in there. But you wouldn't have had that happen if you weren't part of the equation. Yeah. So vitally important to, in all of the written and in the verbal stories, learning how to tell a star story where it's situational, background information, what were the actual achievements, and then what were the results that you got out of it that the company benefited from. Being able to tell those kinds of stories and include that in on the resume and materials, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see most commonly, the hardest hurdle to get over. But once you do, boy, does it make interviewing so much easier. There's a lot more interviews that happen. Multiple offers result from it. Just that one key piece is probably the biggest thing on getting, and hardest thing. Second thing I would say is not really focusing on the process as a job, like you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Having a clear set of measurable goals that you're going to track to, and get yourself an accountability partner if that's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people do. I really encourage it, because this can get very lonely and an emotional roller coaster. So vitally important that you have a support system, getting out there and exercising and doing things that make you feel happy about who you are, and enjoying the time, because there is a little bit more time now. So don't forget the emotional equation here as well, to get out there and do things that make you feel healthy and rejuvenated, to go back in there and get after it.
By the way, I love that. You got to take care of yourself, but if you are in transition, be careful. You can be at home, and when you're at home, everybody thinks you're available. Be careful of all the honeydews, because you really do. Looking for a job is a job. My one that I always come up with that's a big mistake is using what you consider some of the decorum that used to be 20 years ago. And I will watch people, they'll apply online, they'll get an automatic that comes back and says, nope, you're not the one for this one, thanks, but no thanks. And then they stop there. Well, in our electronic world, you may have been weeded out inappropriately. Follow up with your network. The other one is I've watched people, they go for interviews and they want to do a handwritten thank you. That's okay, you can do that, but I've had employers come back and go, well, I didn't get a thank you from this person. Send an email, use the electronic tools, check out your digital footprint, go search yourself online. If you have to, do your own background check. Check yourself out in a digital footprint, because you don't want yourself showing up in a negative way. And we have had candidates that have been disqualified because they show up negatively online, and they don't even realize that they show up negatively. So just pay attention to the way it's changed, and work your network and come through in that digital footprint. You know, Patrice, I'm just going to have you back, because I know that there's like 12,000 things we can cover. There's so much more.
There certainly is.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing all the expertise that you have with executives in transition. Absolutely. And for all of you today, thank you so much for being with us. Here's a couple of things. Remember that we air every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So join us on Facebook.com Innovation Pavilion, or Facebook.com Higher Results. If you miss a show, don't worry about it. We are on IPTV. So just go to ipnow.tv. And you'll get our prior shows, but you can also find us on eye2eyeworkforce.com. So thank you so much for being with us today, and here's to seeing you on the internet.